free will. How much do we really have in the end? Reflecting on our free will, I think, is an instrumental part of our awakening spiritual journey. Because, how much do we actually have? The other day, I was standing in the kitchen with my flatmate discussing precisely this topic. And her spiritual mentor has said that about 20% of our journey is already predestined, and then we have 80% to play around with. But I was also like, how does anybody actually know that precise number to be the case? Some might say that they have channeled this information, but I just don't think that something such as free will and spirituality and awakening has such a cookie cutter answer. And I don't think anyone should listen to anyone who speaks with that much certainty, because the spiritual realm is something that we try to make sense of. However, I think that most of it is beyond our comprehension, and we should really approach topics such like this with a great amount of humility, because I think that leaves much more openness and room to explore and see how all of this unfolds and come to answers that makes the most sense to ourselves. So, do we actually have free will? I certainly feel that I have some free will, but I guess, again, that could be largely an illusion. Maybe it is just my mind, my body, my soul, and the external environment working together, creating a series of cause and effect that will ultimately lead me to fill my spiritual lesson this time around. This certainly could be the case. However, I suppose what makes me feel like I have free will is my ability to reflect and then also change accordingly. But I suppose in the end, that arguably could also just be another chain of cause and effect that is an inevitable result of everything that led up to that moment. So I certainly feel like I have free will, right? I'm here making this video. This seems to come from my own fruition. But in the end, how do I know? And I think, for me at least, that level of ambiguity seems to create a lot of playing room for change, for exploration, and also spiritual and personal discovery. So when it comes to free will and how much we have and how little we have, where does personal responsibility sit in all of this? And this is certainly where I want free will to exist to some degree, because I want us to be able to take ownership and accountability and responsibility for our choices. It is not that straightforward though, because I am someone who do believe in past lives, that we all have a spiritual lesson to move through that was chosen by us for us as a part of our learning queue before we entered the earthly realm. At the same time, I can acknowledge the systemic issues and inequalities that shape our current earthly reality. And I think a lot of that is largely unfair. I do think it is possible to believe in both, like they're not mutually exclusive. That personal responsibility exists, and also that things are deeply unfair. However, we also don't know if our spiritual lesson this time around is to make something more fair, healthy, and good for society at large. Also, another layer on top of all of this is that we just don't have any idea what someone's spiritual lesson is, and also the genetic makeup that they were born into and the environment that they were born into. So I think that, for ourselves and also for other people, we should show a tremendous amount of grace. So do I think that free will is fixed, or do I think it's fluid? I probably believe that it's somewhere in between. That there are aspects of ourselves that are very unlikely to change, because there is certain experiences that we are meant to go through and meant to learn through this lifetime that we are going through this time around. However, I also do think that where free will exists and also where it can change our spiritual path is how our soul, our spirit responds to these lessons, and that can influence how everything unfolds. I think that our spiritual lesson does have a level of malleability to it, so it can change depending upon the choices that we make. Ultimately, I hope that this understanding will lead to more empathy, compassion, and also love for others as your spiritual awakening journey unfolds, and that it expands our heart, it expands our openness, and it expands our curiosity for ourselves and also for other people. Because in the end, nothing is black and white. Most things exist in shades of gray, and I think if we can be with those shades of gray, I think that we will eventually then create a better society for everybody. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Tor. I hope that you found this video and content useful. And if you did, please do hit that like button, subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for listening.